Remarkable story now in the Toronto Star, as I'm told you guys have just been discussing, apparently obtaining a leaked version of off-the-record comments that the president made during that Bloomberg television interview in the Oval Office yesterday. The president suggesting that he hasn't made any compromises with the Canadians at all, according to this article, but that he doesn't want to say that publicly because he doesn't want to embarrass the Canadians and put them in a position where they can't agree to a deal. So the president's saying here, sort of off the record to the Bloomberg team, according to this article, that he's driving a very tough bargain here, but it's so tough that he doesn't want to brag about that publicly because it could put the Canadians in a position where they can't agree. Will that then force the Canadians to demand some kind of concessions in the negotiations that are ongoing now? That's fascinating. So two things to discuss here. One is, why would the president say this? And then the second one is, how did these comments get to the Toronto Star? I mean, fascinating on both levels. The first one seems clear, right? The president wants to boast about his tough negotiating skills, but realizes that if he does that on the record, that could scotch the negotiations and could put the Canadians in an embarrassing position. So he apparently, according to the article, does it, but does it off the record. And then the other question is a real mystery to me, how off-the-record comments in the Bloomberg interview ended up in a Toronto newspaper. And that one is fascinating. According to the newspaper, Bloomberg's not denying the comments, the White House not denying the comments, just saying that if those comments were made, they were off the record, and that should remain off the record. So a fascinating bit of sort of media and political intrigue, and then a fascinating moment in sort of the negotiations ongoing with the Canadians between Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau's teams here in Washington.
What Bloomberg's response is to this, arguably it puts a little heat on them to protect comments that should have been off the record if in fact this is all true. All that said, Eamon, I mean, things get said on both sides, off the record, during negotiations. It seems a stretch to think that these talks were truly derailed by one party or the other talking some smack, talking rudely about the other party privately.
Well, they've been talking smack publicly, right? I mean, so the private smack talking is not going to derail these negotiations if the public smack talking hasn't done it already. I think what it might do is it might give the Canadians some ammunition today to wave the Toronto Star over their heads in the negotiations and say, look, the president's saying he's not giving us a single thing. We want some concessions here. And see what the U.S. side has to offer. So in that way, the president, by making these comments, may have undermined his own side in the ongoing negotiations. I don't think anybody involved, everyone here has got pretty thick skin, and I don't think anybody involved is going to be horrifically offended by this, but I do think it might give the Canadians some leverage, and that's something that the White House doesn't want. They wanted this deal done. They don't want anything to disrupt it in the last hours here, and they want to move on.
I just don't understand how you can ignore the economics here. I mean, $340 billion of exports to Canada last year, $332 billion of imports from Canada last year. We both need each other. It's a state issue. It's an economic issue above all. Do you have any idea, Eamon, what they're haggling over?
We don't, really. There have been some rumors swirling around town, but nothing that we can pin down to the point where I can report it to you. And these sides are not leaking. They both have said that they're not going to negotiate in public, and they've pretty much held to that. It's a very complicated agreement. It's a lot of detail. But you're right. These two economies are so deeply intertwined that it would seem to be in everybody's interest to get this done and get it done as quickly as possible. Nail something down and provide certainty for all of the businesses that do business in North America, and that's quite a lot. It's a big percentage of the global economy, too. So ultimately, the incentives are all in place for a deal today. The question is whether some of the optics and some of the unexpected things like this can be the hiccup that disrupts everything and throws that timetable off.